Mic check, I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of CWB Association podcast with me, Max Ceron. Today we have an awesome episode with a business owner, welder turned business owner, Max Schurr. He's in Alberta, somewhere in the land of the Albertans, running his business, and we got him on the show today, which is fantastic because I've seen this guy's gear around for a few years now. So, Mac, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. What's Mac short for?
Mac is short for Mackenzie.
Okay, all right. I was trying to think like a McDonald or a McNarly.
No, I used to get called McDonald when I was younger. When I was like 3, 4, that would be kind of one of the names they'd pick on me with is McDonald. But no, it's Mackenzie.
I mean, McDonald's not bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could be like McStupid. I don't know. Like.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of worse stuff out there for sure.
All right, man. So like your gear's out there, but I guess people don't know much about who you are. I was cruising your website. I was kind of checking out what's going on with your company, which is up in smoke.
Yep.
I guess right off the top, let's start with how old are you?
I'm 34 years old. I'll be 35 here in April.
35 in the 2021. So
Yeah.
So you still got some life left ahead of you, a little bit.
Still got some life, man. It's funny. I was coming into work there like 4 weeks ago. I'm like, I'm almost on the back 9 right now.
Yeah.
But no, I still got a few. I got a few years left in me for sure.
Man, if you're on the back 9, I'm on the back 1 here. Like I'm screwed. I better be getting the beer girl coming over to drop off some beers right away here.
That's funny.
All right, so you're 35. You're out. Are you in Calgary?
Yeah, I'm out of Calgary. Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
So
born and raised. I grew up in a town just outside of Calgary, actually.
which town?
And then Bright Creek, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I've been.
Yeah,
through
so
there.
I out in Canandaigua country there. So I basically was there till I was about 18, and then as soon as I got into the patch, I moved to Calgary and been here since.
Okay, so you're in high school. Did you like in your small town? You're kind of working. Did you know you want to be a welder finishing high school, or
No.
did you kind of have no idea?
No, you know what? I knew I was always going to be in the trades. I was always grabbing my old man's tools and building skateboard ramps and building forts and doing all that stuff. Like I was always good with my hands, always working with my hands. So I knew I wanted to get into the trades, but no, not into welding.
So then you finished high school. What'd you do? Did you just go work at a restaurant like so many people do, or?
No, back in the day, the most popular thing to do is to graduate high school and then head over to Australia. So I essentially basically graduated. I worked until about November, I think it was, of my graduating year. And then I basically saved up enough money, went to Australia, Thailand, Malaysia, did all that. And then I was there till, I think it was like the middle of April. What would that have been? April 2005, I guess it would have been. And from there, my parents had a good family friend that had done a lot of renovations on our house. He was a master electrician. One of his good buddies worked for, was a superintendent for Leadcore up at the Suncor main plant in Fort McMurray. And they got me a job and I started out, I'm sad to say this, as an electrician.
Zappers are important.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I worked with the electricians for about 3 months. And during that time, obviously you're a journeyman, so you understand being an apprentice. And the first year, you're pretty much, the word.
You're dogging it.
Doing
Yeah.
everything for everyone else, right? And at that time, I was actually a rig welder. I was working for a rig welder. And so basically for those 3 months working for him, I got to see him doing everything that he was doing. I liked what he was doing. And then I actually heard how much money you can make becoming a rig welder.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally marched into Leadcore's office there and I said, listen, I don't want to be an electrician anymore. I want to become a rig welder. And at that time, because there was such a huge drive for trades, they're like, okay, they switched my apprenticeship from electrician to welder and never looked back.
So you, and it's funny you say Australia, lots of my friends got swallowed up by that country because they go visit and they don't come back. They get married. That's what happens. They get married and have babies, and then that's it. But you
I
know,
never got caught in that trap.
it's interesting because as a Red Seal welder, you can Australia's one of the countries you can go dollar for
Yep.
dollar. Like you can just get up and go and work in Australia as a Red Seal, and just walk into that country and get top end work, which is nice to know. It's nice to know that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
then,
absolutely.
you're working for Leadcore. That's who you picked up your first apprenticeship under.
Yep.
Did you do your full term of your journey person through Leadcore?
No, not at all. From there, basically, the rig welder that I was working for, that's when Long Lake started firing up with Nexon, and ProPack out of Airdrie had a major contract for basically doing all the piping, building the mods, boiler. I don't know if they had boilers or not. Anyways, he ended up going down to that site, and because I was out of Calgary, he said, "Listen, Mac, it's like I don't want you to learn your entire apprenticeship up in Fort McMurray. It's not the right place to learn. I want to get you in the shop learning how to do all sorts of different things." So he got me on at ProPack in Airdrie, and I proceeded to do, what was it? I think I was there for almost 2 years working for them. So did a lot of flux core right at the beginning. And then after that, essentially, they couldn't hire B pressure welders at that time.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's something that's still around, but if a shop can't hire a B pressure welder, they're allowed to train an apprentice to go for their C pressure ticket. So I essentially did the test and passed my C pressure ticket. And from there, I proceeded to basically weld sockets, pressurized sockets there for basically until I finished up there.
Yeah.
So you know what, super cool experience. I was making journeyman rate as a
Yeah.
second year welder. Like you couldn't beat that. So yeah, no, a lot of good experience there. But from there, man, I was pretty much doing nonstop stick pretty much for the rest of my career. A little bit of flux core and MIG here and there, but it was a lot of stick, a lot of pressurized stuff.
And it's amazing how the industry is evolving. Like, first of all, your journey from the field as a maintenance slash rig welder, which most rig welding is maintenance,
Yeah.
and then getting into a shop where it's going to be generally new construction. That's an awesome thing. I did the same thing. I've gone back and forth between field and shop a few times in my life, and I dig shop. That's where my heart is in the shop. It's where
Really?
yeah, it is, because I find,
I'm a field guy.
see, I like the organizational part of it. That's the part of my brain that I dig. Like, I like planning the jobs out. I like getting the stuff in, seeing what can get done in the shop, seeing who's going out and how things line up. Because you know, as a field guy, that if the shop guys don't do it right, man, it's a mess, right?
Well, it's a mess, and you're having to do it out in the field without any sort of anything to kind of go off of. It's
That's right. So, that's what happened in my mind. I was out in the field enough fixing messes that I was like, man, I got to get on the front end of this where we don't make the mess, and that's how I ended up getting my steel fab ticket, because then I was like, what? I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I wanna figure out what the hell I'm actually doing for real, you know.
Yep.
And then on the other end of it is your love of stick. You know, we were just talking about this at the shop the other day, because stick is on its way out, really. Like, in the next 15 to 20 years, stick's going to be kind of a dinosaur, because it's just too slow and dirty, and the technology for wire feed processes is going, it's amazing now. Like, all that stuff we used to worry about is like, you can't weld in the wind, you can't weld outside. That's not true anymore. You know, like, that's not a thing anymore. The new wires can do it just fine.
Geez, so you're telling me I got 15, 20 years to make my money and then get out of this thing, hey?
Well, I think you already got a side hustle here that's working out all right.
Most money that I'm making is guys who are burning stick, right? So I just be making my money quick and then getting out of her. But,
well, let me tell you, MIG and flux core, the new processes, burn about 3 times hotter and faster. So if anything, they're going to be burning up more materials than ever.
Then. Okay, well, now I don't have to get it out of it as quick then.
Yeah, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like, I mean, some of these new MIG processes are up in the 20,000 degree range, man. Like, that's freaking hot.
It's crazy. I've over the last 5 years since I've got into this business, I've done a lot of trade shows, and one of the big trade shows, I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to go to, is FabTech.
Yeah, I was a speaker at FabTech last year. It was cool.
Oh, awesome, man! Yeah, down in Chicago.
Yeah, I was there.
Awesome, man. Oh, did you see me there?
I don't know. I had
this in the Alumareel booth. They had the big
I was at the Alumareel booth. I got the little flashlights.
The truck from SEMA as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there. I got the little flashlights. I talked to the really big, tall guy that was there.
Randy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Randy
Yeah.
Ballard. Yeah, yeah. He's a good friend of mine. Yeah. So we must have just missed past there. But yeah, walking around those trade shows and seeing all the new technology that's coming out, like robotic TIG machines and all these massive high amperage flux core and MIG, and it's just, you're right. Everything's turning into robots and that type of stuff. And I think there will always be a need for stick welders and rig welders and all that type of stuff. But I do agree with you. I could see it phasing out in a couple decades for sure, man.
Well,
That's just the evolution,
I think
right?
the jobs will always be there. Like the rig welder is going to be like, we need maintenance. There's no
Oh,
way you get around not having maintenance. I mean, if you look at any pipeline that goes in, the laying of the pipe, putting out the pipeline is the smallest part of the job, because that
yep,
thing's got constant maintenance for its entire life. Like you got
yep,
sleeving crews that are going to be out for the next 20 years, right? So
absolutely. Yep, absolutely. No, yeah, it's crazy to see where everything's moving these days. It was an industry that wasn't touched for a long time. It kind of stayed status quo, whether it was the apparel or the technology in the welding. Like, look at Lincoln welding machines.
hmm
Those guys literally stayed with the two dials literally up until, like, I don't know, what, 8, 9 years ago.
well, it's
Where you
interesting.
saw
I
Miller
think,
coming out with all the crazy digital screens
well,
and all that stuff.
Feronius is amazing. Everlast
Yep.
is amazing. They're doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, even East, out of all the companies that I think have really like changed what they've been doing and like really treading new waters, is like ESOB. Those guys,
Yeah, we
whoever,
got one of the brand new little ESAB welders. They're pretty slick.
yeah, those little Rebel ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, they're a company that they're coming up quick and they're coming up fast. Like when I was welding, the only thing I liked about ESAW was their welding rods. How I always said they had like the gunpowder tip on it. You wouldn't even be touching metal and the damn thing would start welding, right? It was
Yeah.
crazy. I
That-
love those
what were
products.
they
But
called?
other
I think they
than
were
that,
OK55s or something like that. The
yeah,
ESABs, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So when I'm overseas in Europe or in Africa, I'd say probably 80% of the welding machines over there are ESAB.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so ESAB's been big around the world for probably 50 years. They
Yeah,
just never caught on here. Like the Miller and the Lincoln were always like you kind of chose between the two. You either went blue or red,
yep.
and that's kind of all you could do. And in terms of the technology, I got to say that I think Lincoln and Miller had the tech, but no one was buying it. Like it was like companies were like kind of scared to add a third dial. It's like, it's like, well, we know how to do volts and amps. What's that third button? Let's not order it. That's weird,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what though? Me personally, I was a blue guy.
hmm
Absolutely love Miller. Um, but for like the pipeline life, I'd say Lincoln is hands down
I
the way
find that
from
Lincoln's made its money in the field too. They're getting more into the shops
absolutely.
now, but I got both in
So
my garage.
having
So
yeah, fabbing with Miller, like with 78, like 60-10 root and 70-18 Phil and Catman, like Miller just lays down perfect everything in that sense. But I've been told by a lot of guys, and I've watched a lot of pipeliners nowadays, they're moving away from Lincoln because of the technology over the last 5 years that Miller's put into how it's burning that 60-10 and 70-10. It's really starting to, it used to crown a little bit, and now that's starting to lay flat like a
flat.
Lincoln would, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I see a lot of guys switching over to these brand new Millers. So good to see. I'm a Miller guy. I do like Lincoln though, for sure. But yeah, you're right. It was blue or red forever, and now yellow's starting to kind of come into that North American. Obviously, they don't got an engine drive, and they're going to be a shop welder for a long time. But who knows, man? Those guys are making a big charge right now.
Yeah, and we have some of the new Millers in the college. They're the pipe works, and
Okay.
those are designed specifically for pipe welding. So they got the 6010 button that you press 6010 on it, and that flattens your weld out, controls your penetration, watches your keyhole for you.
Gives you more arc force in that.
Yeah,
And
it's all computerized, and then you press the 7018 button, and then you do your fill and cap, and then it gets a nice flow and nice wet edges. It's like the machine's built for it. And I teach my journeyman groups on these welders, and my pass rate's through the roof. And I don't think it's because I'm just such an awesome teacher. I think it's because of the tech. The tech
yeah,
is awesome, right? And the technology helps you pass. Use it for sure, right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. Whatever's going to help you produce a better weld, why not, right?
Yeah. All right, well, we're right at the 15-minute mark. It's a perfect segue because then when we get back, what we'll do is we'll continue the interview with Mac about kind of what happened after that. So stay tuned here on the CWB Association podcast with Mac. I'm Mac Ceron. We'll be back right after these commercials.
The CWB Group is Canada's national welding certification organization. We're pleased to offer welder testing at our state-of-the-art facility in Nisku. We provide welders the opportunity to practice for and take a CSA W47.1 welder qualification test. Book your welder qualification test with Canada's welding experts. Give us a call today at 1-800-844-6790 or visit us online at cwbgroup.org to book your training or testing slot. The CWB Group. We are welding.
The CWB Association membership is new, improved, and focused on you. The CWB Association is offering a free membership with a full suite of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Become a member today. Register at cwbassociation.org.
All right, and we're back here on the CWB Association podcast. I'm Max Ceron with you guys as always, and I got Mac here from Up and Smoke Welding. So, Mac, we were just talking about your welding. You're out. You obviously, if I asked you MIG or stick, you're gonna say stick. What about stick versus TIG? Still stick?
Still stick, man. I did not have the patience for TIG, man. I was actually having a conversation with a big Instagram guy, Dabs Wellington there. I was having a conversation with him. I was just like, man, I did not have the patience to friggin' work with TIG. It was never my thing. I never, other than school, really got into it. And to be completely honest, I pretty much ran my entire career just doing stick, right? It was pretty easy. And it was something that I was good at. So, you know what, I stuck with it and I could find jobs. So I never really branched out, but you know what, seeing a lot of guys out there now, I feel bad for the rig welders out there, man. Guys are willing to sell their children for a job, some of these guys, right? And you have to basically expand your horizons and learn different things and get better, like stainless and Inconel and friggin' doing structural and doing high pressurized piping and doing aluminum. Like, you have to have so many of these different tickets to really set you apart from other guys. And you know what, maybe if I stayed as a rig welder in the trades, I probably would have had to have got into TIG to really stay alive and keep money coming into the bank account, right?
Well, the thing is that, and it's something that we preach all the time. Any young guy coming up right now, or young girl, or young welder in general coming up, I tell them, like, as many tools in your toolbox. Like, you got to put as many tools in your toolbox as you can do. Like, for me, I was a stainless guy. I made half my career probably off stainless. And I had my stainless stick tickets, my MIG ticket, and my flux core. So there was no job I couldn't walk onto. And if they needed something stainless done, I was there, right? And that was huge for me being in Saskatchewan where there's potash, because in the 90s and 2000s, all the potash companies switched everything over to stainless, which was a ton of work for guys like me out there. So it was awesome. And you're talking about, things drying up in Alberta right now for work. I can tell because all the Alberta welders are coming to Saskatchewan now. And it's,
I've seen a huge drive of guys going out that way, right?
Yeah, we got lots of work in Saskatchewan right now. But the problem is that lots of it's production. So like what you're saying, you may have been working for 65, 75 an hour out in the field in Alberta, and you're coming back for a $35 job in a shop. That's a tough pill to swallow, but that's still better than no job, because 35 ain't bad.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? It's been two different industries, or two different parts of the world, and how wages have kind of grown. That would be a tough pill for me to swallow personally. Mm-hmm. Mind you, transitioning from being a rig welder to designing a brand, man, guys don't even want to know the pill I had to swallow. It was huge. It was very, very, very humbling, to say the least.
And I doubt it was only one pill.
Oh man, there were so many. It was bad. It was bad.
All right, so you got your journey person. Did you finish out your trade?
Yeah, I got my journeyman red seal, got my B pressure ticket. Yep.
Okay, and then one day you're like, I'm going to start working with clothing.
Yeah, so kind of how it worked is when I graduated, I got my ticket in 2007. I got my red seal. And basically right after that, I think it was within 6 months, I had my pressure ticket. Couldn't really find work for the first bit doing pressure. And then after, I think 6-7 months or whatever it was, I ended up getting a job with that. From there, the next year and a half, I was trying to work with my truck. It was super hard, right? You know what, looking back on it, would I change things? No, but I think the only thing that was kind of, I think I got into being a rig welder a little too early. Definitely some humbling experiences for sure. But basically from about 2008 and a half, almost 2009, kind of like that November, December, I basically worked nonstop to the end of my career at the end of 2014 with my truck. So in 2014, I had 3 trucks going, including my own rig. So I was obviously running my truck and I had 2 guys working for me. And at that time, I looked at them. I had already been in the field for almost 10 years. And I'm just like, man, this whole being on the road thing, it's taking
Burning you out. Yeah.
I wanted to eventually start having a family and start looking at different ways that I could earn good money, but not be out on the road and be home. I was missing my friends. I was missing playing hockey with the boys, going out to the bar, going golfing, all that type of stuff, right? Seeing family. So I came up with an idea. Me and my buddy, we were driving. At that time, I was actually working out in Balzac there for Strike in their mod yard. And I was driving home with my buddy, Steve Pearson there. And we were both kind of talking about different things we can do to kind of get out in the field. And mine was this clothing design. So that, I think it was the December before there, I decided to march into a company here in Calgary. And I gave them my ideas with my clothing. And as soon as I did that, I was running the clothing line. I was rig welding myself, and I had 2 guys working for me. I'm like, I can't do all this. So I got a 3rd guy running my truck, and I went full bore into running the clothing company. And so I was like, okay, well, if I got 3 guys working for me, I'm still making like $25,000 a month off them. That's more than enough money to sustain my life, obviously.
Yeah.
And I can go full bore into this clothing. Well, then December 2014 hit, and I thought that was going to be the basement for oil. Obviously, we just saw something different here a couple months ago. But oil went down into like that $20-$25 barrel. And I couldn't find work for them. So basically all 3 of my trucks came back and they sat, and I sold them off over the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that time, I went full bore into this clothing line, and it was friggin' tough, because the difference with being a welder and running your own welding company is like, you show up to site, you do your job for the day, and you make your $1,000 or your $900 or your $1,200, whatever they're paying you for your rig, and you go home. As long as you're passing X-ray or passing mag particle or whatever it is,
you
fine. Get that paycheck. Yeah. This has been trying to convince generations of individuals who have used the same clothing for that my gear is better or a better alternative than what's out there. And that's been very hard.
Well, and there's not a lot of other brands out there. So really people are looking at Carhartt. People are, Carhartt? Like,
yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I was never a Dickies guy or any of that stuff.
No, Dickies were always too uncomfortable and not flexible enough. Like,
yeah, exactly. And even Carhartt, it's just
canvas. Yeah,
it's canvas, right? So I wanted to build something that you could move with. It looked good. Like, style points. I come from a younger generation. I'm basically a millennial, right? So I've said this story to a lot of different people. When I first got in the trade, all the rig welders, all they were driving, they're all old boys driving their stock trucks, stock rims, stock everything. By the time my generation came in, you have guys with jacked up trucks, 22-inch rims, mudders, bumpers, because we're a generation that wants to be different and look good doing it, right? And I don't care whoever says no to that, they're full of in my opinion, because that's just the generation we're in, right? Guys want to look good. And you don't know how many people I talk to that says, man, your stuff is so functional, but it actually looks good. Yeah. And that was the whole purpose of this company. And then on top of that, the safety aspect of everything as well, right? So yeah, it's been a tough go, but we've caught on.
So when you started out, and did you have some seed money for this? Like you said, oil dropped out. You had to sell your trucks, which a buddy of mine just sold his second last one. So I know that's happening. Now, how did you invest into this? Did you have to go get a loan? Did you have backers? How, like, if someone's out there young right now listening to you being like, I want to start up a business, and I'm looking at taking my trade experience to go into something else, what's the first steps? Like, how do they do it?
One word: hustle.
Yeah.
It you know what, when I got in, when I decided to take this move, I literally took all the money that I had saved up, which was over 6 figures, and I invested everything I had saved up from rig welding and dumped it all. And I was able to kind of be on my own for almost, I can't even remember now, 2.5, 3 years before I had to start going to the banks.
And that's mainly that's more for investment at that point, for stock and supply, right?
That's where it started running into, because a lot of it at the very beginning was a lot of R&D. And then the types of materials that I use in all my clothing, it's all North American, right? So it's not like we're using Chinese or Mexican or Pakistani made FR materials, fleeces, that type of stuff, where your standard clothing, like just your standard sweatshirt or t-shirt, whatever, that material maybe costs $1 or $2 a yard. When you get into like some of the expensive materials that we're using, we're talking like $35, $40 US a yard. Well, there's a lot of fabric that goes into these garments.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, at the very beginning, I just had to hustle. I would say my hustling point was, as I was a rig welder, saving up money, being smart with it, not going and spending it on stupid things. I saved it up and I dumped all that money into this company. So I'm all in right now, man.
Yeah. So how did you find those materials? Like, how did you start sourcing this stuff in Canada? Like, were you able to?
Yeah. So how I started, honestly,
Just
we're in the
Googling?
age of the internet, right? The old interweb. So I just kind of went on, did some research. It's funny. I've had guys that have worn my stuff from the very beginning, and some guys liked it, some guys didn't. But where our stuff started out with the materials that we were using to like where we are now, the stuff at the beginning is so inferior to what we're using now. Like,
Well, you're learning, right?
oh yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, basically just going on the internet, sourcing all these different things. I'd say the one thing that was like a major change was the leather. So when I first started out using leather on our jackets, I didn't realize how bad tanning was for the environment and the people actually doing it. If you go to a lot of these third world countries that are doing the leathers and like that, there's huge cancer rates and people are just horrible working conditions. So a big part for me when I started doing that is I'm never been about making profit over someone's life. Like, that just does not work for me. So my biggest one was finding this company for our leather, which we use out of Mexico, because there really isn't big tanneries within Canada or US that produce or tan, I guess, leather at the levels that I need to a certain extent, right? So I found this company out of Mexico that basically they actually asked to be audited by a green auditor that comes in and makes sure that all the processes that they're using is good for the environment, make sure they're recycling, good working conditions, all that type of stuff. So that's the type of leather we use. And then everything else that we use on our garments. So I got one of them here. So this is like our Novus working shirt here. So we use like American made YKK snaps. We use Canadian made Kevlar. We serge with Canadian made Nomex thread. Our tags are literally made in Vancouver. Our like even our size tags are done in Vancouver. I try to make sure that everything touches a Canadian or American hand before it leaves our shop, besides our leather. That's the only thing that's fully sourced outside. Well, I guess it is North America.
It's still North America, yeah.
Inside Canada and the US.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't know why, but I've been reading up about leather lately. I'm just weird, but I learned that most of the leather in the world has to come from hotter areas. Cold countries are not good at tanning because of the temperatures required to maintain leather during the tanning process. So most countries that have large tanneries, especially eco-friendly tanneries, are in hot countries because that allows them to use less chemical. Right. Yeah. So it was interesting. And I also learned that the best way to tan or to make your own leather at home is with brains. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's how all the how all the Native Americans used to tan their hides, their buffalo and all
yeah,
that. Was used
and
to
apparently
make them.
the eco-friendly companies still, some of them still use brain as a way to not waste so much of the animal. They save the brains of the animals to then use on the hiding, which is crazy. I didn't know that. I mean, that blew my mind. So I don't know if your leather is like that, but
No, we use chromium.
yeah, because chromium's the
Our
dangerous thing, right?
Yeah, well, and that's what I liked a lot about this leather company is the fact that back in the early 80s and 90s, Leon, Mexico is a massive hub for doing all the leather for automobiles. So during the 80s and 90s, all these leather tanneries were literally just dumping chemical out into the water systems. Well, it destroyed all the farmland in and around Leon, Mexico. So this company made sure that nothing goes out into the system without it being filtered or
Or
reused
burnt or dealt
properly
with or
disposed
whatever.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a big thing for me. I'm the biggest part about my brand that sets us apart from everyone else is we are a premium brand, but everything is done within Canada, the US. We're using higher grades of material, and we're trying to support both Canadian and American economies. That's basically the mission for my company is to, there's been so many people that have come up to me and said, hey, we can save you some money on your fabric if you go to this Chinese brand or if you go to this Mexican brand. And I won't do it. It's not going to happen. I feel that we got the right margins right now to sustain business. And I feel that people really respect that we've kept it North American and we're supporting our economies.
Well, and as a premium Canadian brand, you don't have to step down. You have no reason to lower your brand or lower even your price point, because there's other companies are there. You know, there's the Princess Autos. They'll take care of the low end stuff. What are you going to go and compete against Princess Auto? That'll never happen. You know what I mean? Like, you'll lose money trying to do that. So why bother? You know, you might as well stay premium, stay in your niche, and people will come to you if they want your gear. And I've seen your gear out in the industry, right? So
Yep. Well, you know what? It's never become more apparent to me why I use the grades of materials that I use. I had a customer that messaged me a little while ago, and he was burned very severely, basically from his neck down to the top of his knee. And he was using the company FRs, and they couldn't put him out. It just kept on burning and burning and burning. And when I seen the pictures, it made my stomach curl. I felt so bad, and he wasn't wearing our stuff that night because there was a no hood policy on site, and he had owned one of our FR Thorax pullover hoodies. But I do believe that when you see things like that, I think it's something that guys really got to start considering, because if there's one life lesson that I guess I had is when I was working, man, I hated wearing FRs. It was so damn expensive.
and they don't last because you wash them 2-3 times, the FR's gone.
Well, so that's the other thing is our garments are like this shirt, for instance, this material here, the Mount Vernon Mills, which is made in one of the oldest mills in the United States, is guaranteed FR for the life of the garment. And then all the other materials, a lot of the other materials that we use are inherently FR. So it doesn't have to be treated to make it FR. It's just the fibers that they're using are naturally fire retardant. But after seeing the burns on that guy, I just say to people, if you're working in a site where there's live chemical or there's live anything, and you have the chance of possibly being in a flash fire, after seeing the two guys that have sent me pictures here over the last little bit, super important to spend some money on some good FR, because you are right actually in saying that you wash these things a couple times and the FR goes out of them. There are companies like, won't say their names, but they have a big black horse on the side of them. That's their brand. They're literally on their tag. It says that the FR washes out within 2 to 3 washes on it. Right.
Yep.
So things like that, it's not good. But another misconception that I get from a lot of guys, and it's a lot of newer people or moms and dads buying it for their kids, is FR means that if the person gets caught in a flash fire, that the material will extinguish itself. It won't continue to burn once the ignition source has been taken away, whereas regular clothing just keeps on burning. So guys that are buying my stuff and thinking that they can shoot grinder sparks into their stomach all day, FR burns just like anything else. It's still a cotton, it's still a nylon blend. or 100% cotton, whatever it is. It's just meant to protect if you get caught in a flash fire.
Yeah, if you want to shoot sparks at your belly all day, put on some leather. That's really the only thing that'll stop. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And leather's hot.
Oh, and that's it, right? And that's what my stuff.
Or
in
grow up and don't shoot the sparks at your belly. Like
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like our stuff looks good, but it also has a purpose. Like the reason why there's a slant on our chest for the leather is a right-hand welder going down the bottom end of a pipe will burn more of his right pec and it tapers off towards the left. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why we only have leather on one side of the hood, because a right-hand welder burns the left side of his face. A left-hand welder burns the right side of his face going down the bottom end of a pipe.
So do you have a left-handed version?
Absolutely, we do.
Awesome. Yeah.
Even our jackets, our Testudo and Schurr jackets, if you're a left-hand welder, a regular jacket closes left flap over right. A left-hand jacket will close right flap over left. So when they're coming down, the sparks are going in between the snaps and going onto their belly. So we've thought of everything essentially.
And that's awesome. You know, there's another Canadian company in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, somewhere out east, Terra. They do work boots. And they came out with actual welding work boots. And they're the first work boots I've ever bought. Now, I only buy them now. They're fully carbon fiber. They're super light. They weigh less than a sneaker. They're Nomex, Kevlar, and carbon fiber. And all the stitching is aimed down and covered. So you can't burn the stitching on the boots. That boot is designed by a welder. You know what I mean? Like I've worn hundreds of pairs of welding boots in my life, and these were the first ones that I ever saw that were actually like thought about by a welder. I was like, man, this is money right here. You know, like it's nice.
That's awesome.
It is. It's awesome, and they're a Canadian company, so.
Some of the best designs in the world have come from people who are out in the field doing whatever specific thing they're doing, and then taking an item that they use, seeing that there's an issue with it, and then going basically into their mad scientist cave and coming up with whatever it is to make it better. And that sounds like a super smart idea.
Yeah, it's innovation, man. Yeah, for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so I got to ask you a question though. Up in Smoke, where'd the name come from? Like I'm Cheech and Chong all the way on this. Like I if that's not a Cheech and Chong reference, I don't know what it is.
It is. I specifically remember the day I wanted to name my company. I was 18. Me and that journeyman that I was telling you about, Jeff, we were sitting on a haul road watching all these big oil sand dump trucks going by. And we were talking about me becoming a rig welder one day. And I said, if I'm going to name my company, it's going to be Up in Smoke Welding. So my rig welding company was Up in Smoke Welding. And everyone kind of knew me as Up in Smoke. That was the way it was basically my entire career. And I was like, you know what? From a branding standpoint, it sticks. People see it, they get it, and it looks good. And you know what? That's why we stuck with it. I'd been known as Up in Smoke forever, so why change a good thing?
No, brand is important, man. Like you build your brand over years, and what happens is as your brand strengthens, people come to you. You don't go to them anymore, right? So
that's the way it's been for a while. I don't really go out looking for companies. They've come to me lately, and that's not a cocky thing. It's just I'm busy right now with the stuff that I'm doing, always happy to bring on more work. The biggest thing that I've now started to see is schools down in the US are starting to come to me.
Well, I saw that on your website that you have a collaboration with 2 or 3 different colleges down there.
Yeah, so we got the Georgia Trade School, we got the Kentucky Welding Institute, and we just brought on Valencia College, which is out of Florida, Kissimmee, Florida. And we are looking at onboarding a school out of Colorado here in January. We're in the preliminary stages with them. They came to me, and then another school out of Missouri. So the difference between Canadian and American schools is Canadian, it's all run by an organization like a polytechnic or SAIT, whatever it is.
It's government funding, yeah.
Government funding, right? Whereas down in the US, it's all privately done. So these guys, where we pay, let's say, Lisa, I remember paying around like $700 to go to school, and the government supplements the other $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000, whatever it is, for that student to go through. Down in the US, they basically are paying anywhere between $7,000 to $17,000 to go for basically 3 to 9 months worth of classes. And when they start, they get a big gear bucket. And in that gear bucket is usually an FR jacket or sweater. So we're becoming that part of the gear kit. And then we're helping. If these guys are having competitions, we'll sponsor part of the competition, try to give away some free gear and that type of stuff. But yeah, that's the newest thing now, is going after schools down in the United States.
Well, I'm pretty good at hustling deals, so maybe I'll have to get some type of something worked out between the CWB and Sass Poly and you. And
Well, let's see what we can do, man. I'm always up for that type
yeah,
of stuff.
like
It's
because
one of those
we
things.
get class sweaters every year, right? So
Okay. Well, that's been the hardest thing, is as bad as this sounds, I've kind of surrendered a bit to the Canadian market. It's not going right now. 75 to 80% of my sales are international. And I'd say between that is almost 70 to 75% of it is down to the United States, and the rest is going over to Europe. So my market in Canada is so small right now because, well, we got a goof running our country right now. We can't.
I'm not going to get into that conversation.
Right. That's exactly it. So there's not enough work going, and so many guys are out of work. Whereas the U.S. now, a lot of their infrastructure has been failing for the last 30 years, and now they have someone in power that's wanting to put money into that, and they're very pro-oil currently right now with the administration that's in. So we've just been selling nonstop down to the U.S. It's excellent. And where their dollar is compared to us, our gear is at a very good rate to them. So
yeah, the competitiveness of even like how you said colleges in the U.S. is interesting because they don't have a standardized education in the U.S., right? So it's a free for all. It's the Wild West for schools down there, and they basically compete against each other. And they don't even have a ticketing system that's across the country. So it's interesting how it plays out down there. I, for one, am happy with our ticketing and apprenticeship program we have in Canada because it makes us the best welders in the world, really. Because like I always tell people, how many American welders have you seen come up to Canada?
Yep.
Not one.
You know what? If there's one thing I could take away from the U.S. and kind of bring to Canada that I didn't like personally about our systems, is that a lot of our stuff, at least when I was going to school, is just like a lot of booth welding. And as well as I do, you get out in the field, man, you are upside down, friggin' hanging like a bat, trying to weld something out, right? Like really uncomfortable positions. One of the schools that I love that I'm with right now is Kentucky Welding Institute. And they literally trap a kid in a coffin, essentially, and have him basically welding out of like a 6x6 window, trying to take something, or getting them in like boiler situations where they have a situation where they basically put you in like a little section of the school, and you're having to weld around boiler tubes and around the 90s and all that stuff, and get in and get uncomfortable. They're trying to put them in more real life situations.
Yeah.
And I think if there's anything that the Canadian education can do with welding, is doing more on what you would see out in the field, essentially getting kids out of their comfort zone. I was always good at welding, but I never really learned how to fit. I had to teach that to myself or watch people do it. So things like fitting in school, that's one thing that they're taught down in the US for their piping courses, and getting them into real life situations. I think that's something that could change. However, the Canadian education system for welding has a ton of great things, and I agree with you. We are some of the best welders in the world, and that's the reason why we're getting sent all over the world, and our ticket is recognized all over the place. You're absolutely correct with that. But I think there are things that we can learn from the American schooling system for sure. If we brought in some of those things and then implemented it into our courses, man, we'd be even better.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement, and especially when I work overseas, I see how much Canada influences other countries. So it'd be nice if we could be the leaders for a while.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Well, we're at the end of the show here. Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything cool that you want to bring up before we sign out here?
You know what? I'd say the kind of giving people a heads up. We're producing all of our brand new hoodies here. This is one of them. This is our brand new style of hoodie that we're coming out. We're going with crazy colors this year. These are our brand new thorax hoodies that are coming out. These things are going to be on sale. Hopefully they go on pre-sale here at the end of this week. So head to our website, www.upandsmokewelding.com. Follow us on Instagram for anything. We love getting guys sending in pictures of them welding. And I'd say, you know what, if there's a takeaway, give our brand a shot. We are made in Calgary, Alberta. Everything that's on our gear touches a Canadian or an American hand aside from our leathers. So you are supporting our economy and the US economy. And I think when we're doing that, I think it's helping everyone out. So I just wanted to say that. And I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on here and give me a little bit more exposure about my brand. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, it was tons of fun talking to you, and you know what, we'll probably check back in a bit here and see how you're doing and see how the company's
Absolutely.
doing.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out for anything. Like, I mean, I'm always available if you got any questions or if you want to just chit chat, or when I'm in Calgary, I might have to hit you up.
You best be.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Mac. And if everyone's listening, for everyone that's listening, all the information about his Instagram, his website will be sent out with the Spotify links and also up on YouTube and the CWB site. So, so thanks everybody. Thanks, Mac, and take care.
Cheers.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to the CWB Association Welding Podcast with Max Ceron. If you enjoyed what you heard today, rate our podcast and visit us at cwbassociation.org to learn more. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like to learn about in the future. Produced by the CWB Group and presented by Max Ceron. This podcast serves to educate and connect the welding community. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.